Hello and welcome everyone, I'm Madals and today I have got game number 1 of a best of 3. It's going to be played out on Whirlwind and it is a Zerg versus Terrans. So, one of my favourite matchups, two very good players and I'm very excited to be doing this. So, settle down, get yourself in a nice comfy position, preferably some tea and biscuits because Whirlwind can be one of those maps which leads to much longer games. So, anyway, spawning up in the top left position we have got the yellow Zerg player. It is LoweLy. And his opponent down in the bottom right, the red Terran. It is QXC. Now, both of these two players are pretty solid. They are going to be playing out this best of 3, and therefore, game 1 always is a nice little psychological edge. I've got to say that if I've ever played best of 3s or things like that, game 1 I always find the most important, because generally speaking, if you win game 1, you're in quite a nice spot. You've got that confidence, you've got that little bit of a buffer, that safety net in game 2, that if you lose it, you can still come back. You can afford to take risks in game number 2 as well, and risks either put you a long way ahead or a long way behind, depending on how they play out. So, we'll wait to see what these two are going to do in the first game. Generally speaking, it tends to be a bit more cool, but LoweLy actually going for a very unusual opening here. He went for a double extractor trick onto this 10 pool, I believe it was. Or actually, it may have even been earlier than the 10 pool. So, a really, really early spawning pool up against a Terran player. Usually, you'd expect to see a 15 hatch, but no, LoweLy is going to be putting on the aggression early on. The Overlord is coming down to scout in the bottom left position. This drone rallied across the map to go and scout out QXC, who is going to be going for a command center first. He needs to build his power of his wall off to be safe, and that is exactly what he's going to be doing. Always a good move to do that. 6 Zerglings are on their way out. The command center is now coming down the barracks. Should complete this wall off in the very near future. QXC needs to make sure that he's got this wall off down and that he is ready to deal with this potential aggression. The drone is on its way and is going to go and scout this down. But already the barracks now getting started. Things looking okay to hold this off. And LoweLy, he's not going to be able to do that much with these Zerglings. He comes in, sees that, well, the wall off is there. 2 more Zerglings are already on their way, but now it is up to LoweLy to transition out of this very effectively. Another SCV getting pulled. Needs to be careful to get that supply depot up though. Does not want to risk anything too badly. Little SCV on drone action coming down here. The SCVs are going to win with the second one coming to help, but the wall off is now complete. The SCV going to get back to safety. The supply depot should get raised again, but the Zerglings are getting very close. The SCV going to come out. There's supply depot going back up. You've got to make sure that you keep this wall off completed. And while the Zerglings are coming in and are now getting scouted, this wall off will not die. There's just no way it'll happen. SCVs can get pulled if needed, but all in all, this isn't something to be too concerned about. It can be held off pretty much indefinitely, and that is why LoweLy is going for the hatchery behind this. So now it's just a case of you're going to have to repair all of this up, wait for the Marine to come out. There is a small supply block at the moment actually for QXC because he didn't have an additional supply depot. I was just waiting for this command center to finish in order to get the supply there. But yeah, now we can just see that actually things looking fairly solid. 2 more Zerglings just running around, going to go and chase down that SCV there. But once the first Marine's out, the Zerglings attacking into this natural are going to just get easily cleaned up. So this is all looking good for QXC at the moment. LoweLy, he's expanding behind this. The Zerglings slowly getting forced back one at a time, just trying to do as much damage as they can because repairing is just a bit of a mineral waste there, a bit of lost mining time, so always a good move. Now, for LoweLy, how is he going to transition out of this? Well, his natural base is up, or about to be up, so he can start really mass producing those drones. Whether he takes a third early or not is really the big decision, because on the one hand you want to stay a base up as a Zerg, but LoweLy's already shown that he's not afraid to be very aggressive, so if he keeps up that aggressive posture, maybe he can push through. But this drone getting a kill there, very happy with himself. QXC in the meantime is floating down this orbital command. We've got the barracks getting a reactor, the factory on its way down to the one gas just still sitting there comfortably, and QXC going very economically focused, getting his 3rd CC up really quite early, and that means that now LoweLy could potentially go for a big hit of pressure if he wanted to. He's still got these Zerglings alive, so they're just running around trying to just a little bait, be like, okay, if you want to move down here, go for it, but I've got some Zerglings. Also getting a good read. If only he could see that command center, it would be brilliant, but he does now know that the reactor is coming down on that factory and that the first Hellions will be hitting the field shortly. These few SCVs do have to be a little bit cautious, otherwise Zerglings will get a couple of kills. But for the moment, LoweLy not trying to take an expansion. Oh, the Zerglings managed to get in! The Zerglings need to go and scout out to the top there, though. Are they going to see it? No, they don't yet. If they just went up there, they would get such important information, because LoweLy needs to identify that that third is there, but instead he's going to go and try and do some damage to the mineral line, and that means that he is not going to get the scout off. QXC getting away very luckily there, because even though he potentially risked losing a couple of workers, 3 in total killed this game, he hid this third command center, and if LoweLy had seen that, it may have completely changed the way he played out this match for the time being. But yeah, as things stand, LoweLy now, he's just getting down a spine call already to help defend against these inevitable Hellions that will be pushing across, getting his first 2 gas up, but no third CC as of yet. The Hellions making their way across. Are they going to be able to poke in and do much damage? Well, actually, no. There's 2 queens and a spine call up. The Hellions are not going to be able to get in. They just want to check to see if a third's down. We'll see there's not. May come and check the other potential third location, and that is exactly what LoweLy is going to do. So, as this stands now, QXC, he's going to be getting an economical advantage. He may not be able to do much damage here. He's going to just run straight through, gets 2 drones there, which is actually quite nice. The spine caller wasn't quite done in time, and now we see quite a few drones are actually going to be taken down. So this is going magnificently well for QXC here. He's already killed 9 workers. The Hellions will get cleaned up, but he's losing a lot of mining time for his opponent too. Definitely worthwhile there. That push in did more damage than it ever should have done, and now QXC is going to be sitting quite comfortably, only 2 SCVs behind that of his opponent's drone count, but he's got the 3rd orbital command done, he's got 3 mules available, and he knows that his opponent doesn't have a 3rd base. That is a good spot for a Terran player to be in, but the first roaches on their way out, just going to be trying to force back these Hellions for the time being. The lair timing is a little late. Usually you tend to see that slightly earlier, around the 7-minute mark, if you're not going to get up a really quick third. But all in all, that's nothing to worry about massively, because yes, the roaches are coming out, the Hellions are still going to keep getting pushed back. The Queen's actually sniping one down there, so that's always good to see. This Overlord still has no clue about what's happening. Basically, all that's in the vision of LoweLy for the time being is that, well, I know that my opponent is happily sitting down here, happily just getting out some Hellions. He's got his natural up and is now getting at least probably a 3rd gas. Doesn't know about the 4th for sure. And all of these things actually just mean that without knowing about this 3rd orbital command, LoweLy doesn't know that even taking this 3rd base is actually going to only put him on equal bases, and that means economically he's not in the best position. We can see that still the work count very close. A single tank down here for QXC at the moment, who's getting tanks out rather than the much more common metagame of Biomine. But now, as it stands, things for QXC, he's going to be quite happy. The double upgrade's coming down, and of course, if this was Biomine, that 2-2 timing push would be ever so common, but getting the tanks out means that actually these timing windows may not be quite the same as we're used to seeing, and LoweLy actually just going to be checking up very quickly, getting an infestation pit down, still off of 2 bases. The Hellion is going to come through and be able to get the scout down to see that the 3rd is up, and this is an important scout for QXC now, because he knows what his opponent's doing, doesn't have to be worried too much about these 2 base plays, and therefore he can happily take this expansion, can commit to actually teching up a bit more himself without having to pump out a lot of units or try and get super defensive. But for the moment, LoweLy, with the 1-1 upgrades coming down, he is going to be taking straight up into Ultras, or should be at least. We should see the Hive get started very quickly. Around an 11-minute Hive is a nice time to get that, especially when you're going for these. You'll end up with 2-2 Ultras, which you can then get chitinous placing nice and fast. LoweLy actually even going for pathogen glands too, so he's getting those infestors out, favouring that very, well, it's a bit more of an old style now, actually, getting those infestors down. So something which is not so commonly seen, but then again, QXC getting tanks, which is, again, not as often seen in the current metagame compared to Biomine. But these 2 players just happily macroing up for the moment. One thing that LoweLy really needs to do is secure up a 4th base, because he's got to get a base up on his opponent. Otherwise, economically, QXC is just going to get himself into such an advantageous position, especially when it's completely unbeknown that this base is even down. For the moment, LoweLy only knows that there's 2 bases, and he doesn't really know much else at all. He's got very little scouting information in the main base, and as such, can't really respond to what could be coming down, but he is getting some infestors. 1-1 upgrades are nearly complete. This Hive not actually got started, so not going to be rushing up into Ultralisk tech. Instead, just going to be sitting there getting the infestors out and really prioritizing that, which can be good. Ooh, the tank shop will have given away that there is that 3rd base down there, or at least potentially a 3rd base down there, just when you see that, because if you see the tank shop go down, there's no other reason to have tanks up here other than trying to protect a 3rd. So now QXC just going to start pushing back some of the creep. We see the Baning Nest is on its way down here for the Zerg player, as well as the 2-2 upgrades getting started. But 2-2 already on its way here for QXC2. That's good. Nice little fungal growth there, and in comes the Zerglings. Another chain fungal, and with only 2 medevacs there, this is going to get cleaned up very efficiently for the Zerg. And as we can see, an additional 800 resources lost there. A medevac flying off, trying to bait out that there could be a drop on its way down, but actually nothing in there. But it is going to force LoweLy back, giving QXC some time to really rally up some reinforcements. The 4th base on its way down does get scouted there from the medevac, so again, a good little spot. The creep spread for LoweLy is going quite nicely. He's just keeping pushing that out. It could be a bit further, but it's a very wide map, so he's just making sure that he actually joins up all of his bases and gets good spread across the entire width of the map, as opposed to just making a creep highway. Spire on its way down, Spore Callers on its way down to help defend against drop. The Hive is about a third done, so now starting that tech up, getting the Spire suggests that it's going to be into Broodlord tech, which is, again, not something that's so commonly seen at the moment, but it's still really effective. Broodlord Infestor is a strong composition, just not quite as strong as it was in Wings of Liberty. But yeah, for the time being, QXE, he's just going to be sitting, turtling up, at least until he's got 2-2 done. He may look to go and move out after that, go for some drops, just try and keep his opponent pinned back, not getting too comfortable, not being able to just macro to the max. But actually, LoweLy isn't macroing that hard. He's only at 74 drones to 70 SCVs plus 3 mules. That means, in terms of income, QXE actually sitting quite comfortably there as long as he cools down the mules and doesn't just bank up the energy as he's currently doing. But that's fine. Drops are still going to be incoming. That Zergling should be able to see, or should have at least caught just a glimpse of that medevac. But now the Infestors coming forward. A good little fungal growth goes down there, catching a lot of those Marines. And with the bailing from Zerglings, that is going to get forced back very, very convincingly. The medevac to the side here does get spotted. The top one getting spotted by those overlords too. So the drop is going to come down. Should get cleaned up relatively easily. Simultaneously, a drop trying to come down into the third. But the Spore Caller and Queen are going to be able to snipe off that medevac very effectively. LoweLy's defense of these drops is really quite solid. He does lose a Queen and will lose a couple of drones, but knocking out a medevac and dealing with the second drop very cost effectively at the same time is going to make it worthwhile. LoweLy at the same time is getting down adrenal glands. He should start the 3-3 melee upgrades as well as the Greater Spire coming down too. But here comes another push in from the Terran player. A fungal growth hits on those medevacs. They're going to get shut down, but a good number of tanks are going to force LoweLy back for the time being. You've got to be so cautious when you engage into here. Keeping the medevac count down though is essential. If you manage to keep that really low, the heavy marine composition has to be just so careful whenever it moves in. There's another medevac falling, only 3 remain, but the tanks are slowly edging forward. This Greater Spire cannot finish quickly enough for LoweLy at the moment. He needs a way to deal with these tanks because they're just going to start leapfrogging ever closer forward. There are more Zerglings, more Banelings coming out, more fungal growths trying to hit, trying to slow the advance of the Terran player. But QXE, he is just edging ever closer, and LoweLy at some point is going to have to engage this force, and that's not something that he wants to do when there are just so many tanks here. He's going for the flank, trying to send some Zerglings in from the side. All of the Banelings rolling in from the front. Some good connections on those Marines. The tanks are starting to get taken out, and as long as the tanks go down, this won't be too bad. We see more infantry getting caught up by those fungal growths. Corruptors coming in. They are dealing very effectively with those medevacs, and now the final tanks have been cleaned up, but at the same time a drop coming to the top right hand base, but it does get cleaned out as well. A few tanks remain, a few Marines remain, but the important thing for LoweLy is he is still setting up at nearly the 70 drone mark, but he's also got that Greater Spire. So once he starts actually getting the resources required to really fund getting some Broodlords out, he's going to be in a much nicer spot, but he's down about 30 supply. So he's got to be cautious of what QXE is going to be coming in with. He needs some of those Broodlords out, but they're just not going to get there in time. There isn't enough money to do this. So the Corruptors are a bit of dead space for the time being, but here comes the push in. The tanks trying to get a good little siege up position, but one gets taken down. The second one with a fungal growth on it will go down too, and now the Marines and Marauders are going to try and push forward. The Corruptors just sitting there barely looking at these Marauders push in, and of course the Marauders with the Marine support are being surprisingly effective. This third hatchery could easily go down here. Banelings trying to roll in a good little pickup. Zerglings trying to stream in as well at the same time. They do have adrenal glands, but more reinforcements on their way forward. Things not looking too good for the Zerg player at the moment as the tank reinforcements come in. If they get into a good siege position, then this means the third base is going to be in a tremendous amount of problems. It is going to fall. LoweLy now on the absolute ropes. QXE just pressuring forward with more and more coming in from behind. He's taking his fourth base at the same time too. LoweLy, he just doesn't have an answer for this. He teched up to try and get that Greater Spire ASAP, but without morphing any Broodlords, it is not being too much help for him. Trying to rely solely on these Zerglings. Even the Infestor count down to 0 at the moment for the Zerg player. And having lost that third, he is now only mining off of his natural and fourth base, the main pretty much mined out, and still QXE has just such an advantageous lead in terms of the army supply, 64 to 105. Things looking good, but good work by LoweLy here, trying to pick off reinforcements as they come in. That is the best he can hope for, trying to stop this army from advancing in, buying himself a little bit of time, trying to get these Broodlords out, but 3 Broodlords alone are not going to be enough against 34 Marines, so he's got to be a little bit careful. Luckily, no Vikings down yet, but there are more starports on the way. The Zerglings going for a little bit of counter pressure, trying to run in here, try trying to pick off a couple more SCVs, trying to hurt the economy of the Terran player, but with a 4th base down, actually, QXE, he doesn't have to worry too much. Even losing a few SCVs there just means that it frees up more supply for him in order to get out more army, and that is not going to be a problem when he is comfortably sitting with these 4 bases. He's even got a 5th on its way down, and he's got a very sizable force on the ground as well. 3-2 upgrades done, plus 3 Terran infantry armor nearly completed. 3-3 melee upgrades for the Zerg nearly done. That's going to help his broodlings, but it is all going to come down to probably this next engagement. QXE, a good 60 supply ahead for the time being, and that is just such a scary point to be. The drops are getting cleaned up relatively nicely for the time being, but just look at how much stuff is here. The Broodlords have got their work cut out, and there is only 3 of them after all, and that is going to make it very difficult for this to work. But here comes an attempt at some fungal growth, not quite hitting the mark there. QXE just baiting back. He knows that if he buys his time, he should be okay. The Broodlords, if they get positioned on this high ground, will be very difficult to deal with. They will be able to start sieging down here and will force back the Terran for the time being. But LoweLy, he's not looking to be in that much of a comfortable spot, is holding off for the moment, but still, QXE, he's just relentless with this aggression. He's got such good macro behind this. He's getting up the Corvid reactor as well as getting some Ravens out. The Broodlords are the only real threat, but if he's able to snipe those down, then there's just so much infantry and tanks here that it won't be too difficult to deal with. Meantime, though, look at this. A lot of speedlings coming down, picking off reinforcements. Smart move to make. Got to be careful of the Broodlords, though. The Infestors need to get some good fungal growths, and that is exactly what LoweLy's trying to do while retreating, while picking off the reinforcements with those speedlings. This is exactly what he needs to do. He's got to keep the Broodlords alive, though. One has already fallen, and QXE still moving ever closer. The speedlings are going to make their way into the natural base, picking off a couple more of these Marines. Of course, 3-3 speedlings with adrenal glands are incredibly potent at picking off small numbers of units and reinforcements. SCVs going down, but this is not deterring QXE from just moving forward. He's got a good number of tanks, but they've got to be careful with the Broodlords there. 2 more Broodlords are morphing. The Banelings have got to be careful not to get taken out. The Medevacs, rather, getting hit really nicely by a fungal growth, but the tank's now getting into a good spot. Banelings connecting on the tanks, which is less than ideal, but in comes the Banelings now, trying to get a good surround on a lot of that infantry. The tanks are getting taken out at the same time. LoweLy is really fighting his way back into this. QXE looking now to be falling slightly behind, especially with this counterattack doing so much damage. A lot of SCVs have been taken out there. And of course this push has also been taken out as well, so this is looking really good for LoweLy. He bought his time so effectively. Speedlings now in the main base, slowly picking apart everything, and the reinforcements just aren't able to deal with these Zerglings as quickly as the Zerglings seem to be able to take everything out. LoweLy does have his 4th base back up and running again, needs to get a couple more drones in there though, but as things stand, LoweLy, he's taken the supply lead for the first time in a very long period. Both players are getting very starved of resources. Luckily for QXE though, he does have this 5th base and this 4th base, which is going to really be helpful for him in order to keep macroing up. Their supply is incredibly equal. This game now very close indeed. The upgrades are both the same, 3-3 upgrades on both sides. This is just LoweLy, how he managed to hold that off was just so impressive, and it was all due to the speedling counter push and those speedlings picking off reinforcements, meaning the QXE just couldn't keep steamrolling his way forward, and every time he lost units they weren't getting replaced. But LoweLy, he is still 20 supply behind now, but the Broodlord count's slightly higher. He's up at 4 Broodlords, could do with a couple of more. The Infestors have got a good amount of energy, but now there are these Ravens too, so the Ravens are going to help. More reinforcements making their way across. QXE not got a huge bank, but then neither has LoweLy. So these two really are fighting tooth and nail. This bottom left expansion now discovered by a single Marine. A drop is going to make its way over there too, but Zerglings are there ready to help, and of course, as this drop comes to unloads, as long as the Zerglings are pretty proactive, they will slow it, maybe not stop it, but it's better than nothing. They are going to get dropped in the most cost-effective position, right up against the wall, preventing the nice surround, and that means that since the Marauder went down first, actually the Zerglings won't be able to clean that out. The Corrupt is coming over, will pick off the Medevac, but that means now that all of these units are pulled down to the bottom left when all of QXE's army is up to the top right. This is good positioning work, and it's allowing QXE to try and get in a good position. His economy looking so good still because he's just got these 5 bases. The LoweLy, he's still got superior numbers of workers. Zerglings running around. If only they came down to one of these splinter expansions, he'd be in a good spot, but here comes QXE moving forward. A couple of Seeker missiles trying to go down, will get out of range just in time. Always important. The Ravens are such a critical part of this late game composition, but LoweLy, he's got the Broodlord count slowly getting higher. Still at 4, getting more Corruptors out. A drop here into the 4th base will get cleaned up. The Medevac goes down too. In terms of resources lost, QXE losing about 5,000 more than that of his opponent, so not a huge amount. All the Broodlords have got to be careful. They are very far forward here. The Ravens just coming and hugging up. Seeker missiles are getting triggered on pretty much everything, and that means the Broodlords are going to take some massive hits. The Infestor's taking quite a bit of damage there too. They are getting some good fungal growth off, but QXC now 70 supply ahead. Those Broodlords have all died, and this is leaving very little for LoweLy to defend, and there is the GG from game number 1. QXC doing a really nice job there of just constantly putting on the pressure. Unfortunately, LoweLy had the Broodlords too far forward, and that meant that they went down very quickly. But that was game 1 of this best of 3. So make sure you like the video, leave a cool comment, and then subscribe. Then flick over to my channel, and I will see you at game 2 in any second.